Okay, this one's a little embarrassing, to be honest. I'll try really hard not to get emotional, but no guarantees. Alright, it's called Flex on Love. So, oh my gosh. So, in this world where people are desperately looking for someone to love them, it feels like a bit of an asshole move to talk about how lucky I am. To be fair, I've had so many failed and toxic relationships that finding a pure love, or rather finding it again, is an absolute gift. And I want to share it with all of you. I first met my main man around 16 years ago. I was in college, not yet 21, of course, and a friend asked me to a house party. It was awesome. I drank an insane amount of alcohol, lost my favorite shirt, and was still drunk enough the following day to make some bad choices. This party was at this guy's place, and he seemed nice. Not that I really interacted at the time. We didn't start hanging out until a few years later. About a decade ago, I was single for a bit, which I basically never was, and I happened to see him again at that same friend's house. He had a bit of an interesting reputation, and I wanted to meet, to know more. We got to chatting, and I was pretty intrigued. A lot of guys I can chat Asimov with. Plus, I have a weakness for capable people, Schrodinger's cat jokes, and intelligent humor. He was easy to talk with, a very decent human, and, gosh, the reputation of being good in bed didn't hurt. The problem was, he wouldn't make a move, like ever. He accepted others' advances, but wasn't someone who would take that step. So if I wanted more, I was going to have to ask for it. And I left so many hints and opportunities. Didn't matter. It was his personal choice and way of life. He never made the first move. And yet he had around 3 girls in rotation at all times for years. No secrets. He was totally open about it and above board. He was poly and very comfortable with his lifestyle. Finally, I gathered my nerve and just asked something along the lines of, "Hey, I hear you have 3 girlfriends. Can you add a 4th?" At first, it was just for fun sex, which was amazing. I didn't have the mental picture that this was going to be a forever thing. I didn't have to adhere to any specific patterns of behavior. It was just supposed to be sex and not complicated. I was finally free to just enjoy it for the first time ever without other expectations. It was great. Don't get me wrong. I think it was very good for me. Like, we had a lot of fun. There was this one time where I was coming to pick him up as one of his other girls was dropping him off. And we made this joke along the lines of like, "Hi, you must be Tuesday. I'm Wednesday. Nice to meet you." It was totally chill and not weird at all. It was like a just really uninhibited relationship. The thing was, the sex was great, but we laughed together so much. I got hooked. I wasn't in love or anything for quite a while, but he sure was addicting. Who doesn't want to curl up in bed after and during great sex and laugh and giggle with your partner while you talk for a couple of hours? We started seeing each other more and more, and the others slowly faded away till it was just us. I was still dealing with my religious upbringing, though, and for me, the end-all goal was marriage. I moved in, and we did a trial year to see how we would work out, and at the end of that, we would decide if marriage was going to be a thing. I had my heart set on it, as it was a deal breaker for me back then, and it was a magical year. The sex stayed good and maintained several times a week for frequency. The laughter stayed. It was daily. All in all, it was wonderful. He'd warned me that he wasn't someone who wanted marriage or kids, but I was so sure he would change his mind. Love equaled those things for me. I didn't know any other way. If he loved me, then he would of course marry me. The year came to an end, and he didn't think he could do it after all. He loved me so much, but marriage was not for him. A deal breaker was fixed for me. If marriage was off the table, we were done. I didn't know until I thought he had rejected me that he had crept in and filled up so much of my heart. I loved him second only to my own child, and I was shocked to find how much I cared. I took his rejection of the sex contract / marriage concept personally, so I left, and it nearly broke me. We went our own ways for a bit, reconnected briefly, I got my hopes up and dashed again, and I ended up staying single for a few years. I had never gone more than 2 weeks between boyfriends before, But after him, I needed a break to find myself. I was so off kilter, I had to figure out who I was. He reached out a few times over the first few years, but the sight of his picture would still give me butterflies and make me cry, so I didn't reply. I finally moved on, thinking of him didn't hurt anymore. Other boys came and left. I stopped thinking about him, mostly. Almost 6 years after we had parted ways, I was finally able to remember his voice and think about him without really feeling anything. I thought I was cured of my attachment. Life happened, and 8 years after we had last seen each other, I posted a pic on Facebook and he liked it. I was surprised, but I thought it was safe to talk to him finally. I'd been reconnecting with people from my past recently, so I messaged him. The first conversation was hesitant. I confidently told him I was over him. He accepted that, and then quietly told me he wasn't, at which I melted like butter. By the second conversation, it was like we'd never been apart. By this time, I'd made a lot of changes. I had a couple of boyfriends of my own. I was living 2,000 miles away from him. I was trying to come to terms with being poly myself after a lifetime of conservative Christian upbringing. Whew, turns out I am not one for marriage after all, and monogamy really isn't my thing either. My kid was having some major mental health issues, and we were dealing with hospitals, undiagnosed mental illness, suicide attempts, autism, and constant hallucinations and delusions. I was drowning. Things finally came to a head. I was no longer able to work because of my child's needs, and I couldn't pay my bills anymore. I didn't know how to ask for help, and I lost everything. Sorry, this one's kind of emotional. I'm totally gonna cry on camera and shut up. Ignore it. One of my wonderful friends told me I always had a place with her if I moved back to Oregon. I was staying in my car that I was also about to lose with my kid and our dog, and rejecting offers for sex as I held a sign asking for money from strangers. Met a few really good folks. Damn it, sorry. Ignore that. Met a few really good folks, but they were also struggling and not very equipped to help us out even though they wanted to. Before I lost the car too, we drove around the country for a while before I accepted my friend's offer and we headed back towards the place where we grew up. I had never intended to return. Too many bad memories. But it was the only place I had enough connections and support, and I clearly couldn't do it myself anymore. Damn it, I'm gonna have to redo this one. Alright, whatever. I'm gonna be stubborn, I'm just gonna do it anyway because honesty and unfilteredness is kind of my thing, so suck it up if it makes you emotional. When I finally admitted how I was living, my man sent me money then and there so we could come straight back without me panhandling any longer. My other men probably would have helped too. They told me to tell them if I needed, but I didn't know how to tell them what I was going through. I just kind of disappeared. Long story short, I got back, and almost 6 months in, well, 7 or so now, my kiddo was doing much better with new meds, and I finally started to find my feet again. The thing is, my man didn't really date after we separated. He'd been almost entirely alone for the last 8 years. He hadn't even received a hug or any physical contact from an adult for a couple of years by the time I got back. He'd been in a deep depression and not functional himself for a few years in there. It was the birth of his godson that brought him out to a functioning level. It's wonderful what the pure love of children can do for a heart so damaged. Hugs from a child can heal so many wounds, but it's not the same as supportive love from a partner. He has quite a number of issues of his own. It's so annoying. World, I don't care if you see me cry. It's the truth of who I am. He has quite a number of issues of his own. He is the most brilliant person I've ever known, but that causes issues for him too. He has extreme trouble with social anxiety, regular anxiety, depression, and he's been in chronic pain most of the time I've known him. He just ignores it because he can still function, and he's still more efficient than anyone else who works for him or works with him. It wasn't totally fluid when we reconnected, of course. We're older. Some minor things had changed a bit, but we found our flow again. It was hard for me at first to keep asking him for money, but I had no way to support myself. I wasn't a functional human anymore. Finally, I recently got past my insecurities and found myself no longer uncomfortable with asking for what I needed. And I finally understood that no matter what I was facing, my man will be there. He'll be standing behind me, holding back the world. Oh, what did I say? Oh my gosh. He will be standing behind me, holding up the world while I get myself back together. No longer in the same shape as before. Broken bits don't all fit the same way any longer. It doesn't matter. He loves me, and he loves all of me. He's my number one, and I'm his. But there's still room and acceptance of the other people in our lives. Well, my life mostly. But if he ends up with another person in his life, that's all right as well. I know that at the end of the day, he's who I want to fall asleep with. After years of waiting for me and loving me the whole time I refused to speak with him, I have no room for doubt of his affections. My wonderful robot man will be mine forever. This doesn't make either of us perfect people, of course. We still have our differences and things that we are adjusting to find compromise. But I have someone on my side who I can truly believe will have my back. Someone that I laugh and cry with whom I have no reservations or inhibitions in my behavior. Someone I can be 100% me around. I am very, very lucky.